Um, Hi to all. I am pleased to welcome our distinguished speakers as part of the international campaign for the liberation of Harak Reef's detainees and all political prisoners and those of conscience in Morocco. First of all, I would like to express my sincere condolences to the political prisoner Nasser Zafzafi, his family, and all those who struggle for justice and freedom in Morocco following the passing of Izzi Ahmed Zafzafi. May Allah have mercy on him. And Izzi Ahmed Zafzafi is Nasser Zafzafi's father and also one of the pioneers in organizing this international solidarity campaign with the political prisoners of Harak Reef movements. So I will try to do it in Rifia, so please, sorry if I don't pronounce very well. مساء الخير عليكم ميتما سويتما ضم سكارو روغ إتسكار إيجان تعزية تمقرنت ونكراف السياسيين ناصر السفسافي ودول شوميناس وكل شيء حريين تحريين نال المغرب كالمخت نعزي أحمد السفسافي الله يرحمه. So in this context, so we're organizing this international solidarity campaign, and the idea is to discuss together the different strategies to achieve this goal. So on behalf of the Moroccan Association for Human Rights, I warmly welcome our distinguished speakers. Jamal Ben Omar, former Under Secretary General of the United States, former Special Advisor to the UN, and former UN Special Envoy. He's also the president of the International Center for Dialogue Initiatives based in New York and a former political prisoner in Morocco. We also have Chu Seruten, who is a member of the European Parliament with the Labour Party Greens in Netherlands. He contributed to the adoption of the European Parliament resolution of freedom of expression in Morocco, which included the case of Nasser Zafzafi, of course. And he has also repeatedly welcomed Nasser Zafzafi's father, late Ahmed Zafzafi, to the European Parliament. We also have with us Brian Tronick, who is the director of the Freedom House program on the release of political prisoners. He's an international human rights lawyer based in Washington, D.C., and he plays a key role in international campaigns demanding the release of Nasser Zafzafi and his fellow activists. We also have with us Suad Brahma, who is a lawyer at the Sittat Bar and a human rights activist dedicated to defending the public freedoms, the freedoms and the rights of political prisoners in Morocco. She was also a lawyer of several political prisoners, including, of course, those of Harak Reef. And she's also the president of the Moroccan Association for Human Rights. So welcome to all. Thank you for being here. I would like to speak to begin with Suad, who is the president of the Moroccan Association for Human Rights, and I would like to ask her directly in what is the current situation of the Harak detainees and their families, and what steps is the IMDH, the Moroccan Association for Human Rights, currently taking actions to raise awareness about the Harak detainees, and what are the obstacles that the association encounter in your work defending the rights of prisoners of the rape movement. So سعاد غنبدا بك الندوة. السؤال هو شنو هي الحالة الآن ديال معتقلي حراك الريف والعائلات ديالهم، وشنو ما هي النضالات التي تتقودها الجمعية المغربية لحقوق الإنسان باش تدافع على معتقلي الحراك الريف ومعتقلين السياسيين ومعتقلي الرأي عامة، وشنو هما العقبات اللي كتواجهوها في العمل ديالكم للدفاع عن معتقلي الريف ومعتقلي الرأي والسياسيين ومعتقلين ديال جميع المعتقلين السياسيين ومعتقلين ديال الاحتجاجات الاجتماعية social movements. وفي 10 دقائق.
هذه أسئلة كثيرة على 10 دقائق. إذن تحية لك رفيقة تهاني، شكرا على هذه الإمكانية اللي وفرتي لنا اليوم. لابد أن أتقدم بالشكر الجزيل والكبير جدا للضيوف ديالنا الأجلاء اللي معروفين بطبيعة الحال كيف ما أشرتي، وإن كان باللغة الإنجليزية، إلى يعني العلم ديالهم بأنهم من الناس الذين يلعبون دورا كبيرا ويشاركون من أجل المطالبة بإطلاق من تبقى من معتقلي الريف، وأيضا كافة المعتقلين السياسيين في المغرب، وكذلك من أشد المساندين والداعمين للقضايا المعتقلين، خصوصا معتقلي حراك الريف، واللي كلهم طالبوا بإطلاق سراح ناصر الزبزافي وكذلك كل رفاقه. إذن هذا اليوم، هذا اللقاء ديالنا اليوم أو هذه الندوة اليوم هي جاءت في إطار الحملة الدولية اللي كيقوم بها العديد من الفعاليات من أجل المطالبة بإطلاق سراح المعتقلين، واللي للأسف كانت المطالبة والمناشدة الكبيرة جدا من أجل إطلاق خصوصا ما تعلق بناصر الزبزافي لظرفه الإنساني أكثر من أي شيء، لأنه كان الوالدة دياله مصابة بالسرطان، وأيضا والده كان مصاب بالسرطان، وكان في لحظاته الأخيرة، ولكن للأسف لم تؤخذ مناشدات الجميع من أجل إطلاق سراحه. لذلك أنا أتوجه بالعزاء لأسرة الفقيد أحمد عزي الزبزافي وأسرته الصغيرة، وكذلك كل أسرته الكبيرة بالريف، وكذلك إلى ناصر الزبزافي وكل المعتقلين معه، خصوصا وأنه كان سندا ودعما وصوتا لكل للمعتقلي الريف وكذلك لكل المعتقلين. إذن السادة الكرام، ضيوفنا الأجلاء، كل المتتبعين على صفحة الجمعية أو المتتبعين ديالنا عبر اللايف، كل باسمه وبصفته، أود في البداية أن أتوجه باسم المكتب المركزي للجمعية المغربية لحقوق الإنسان بأرفع التحايا وأبلغ عبارة الشكر الجزيل لكم ولكل من ساهم في هذه الحملة الدولية الرامية إلى المطالبة بإطلاق سراح معتقلي الريف وكافة المعتقلين السياسيين بالمغرب. كلنا نعلم بأن قضية معتقلي حراك الشعبي بالريف ليست مسألة يمكن اختزالها في مجموعة من الأشخاص فقط، بقدر ما هي في جوهرها ومبناها قضية عادلة، قضية عدالة اجتماعية وإحقاق تام لفعلية حقوق الإنسان. فهؤلاء الشباب كما تابع الجميع خرجوا سنتين ما بين أواخر 2016 و 2017 للمطالبة بأبسط الحقوق الاجتماعية والثقافية التي أجمع الكل بما في ذلك الدولة على صوابها ومصداقيتها، كالحق في الصحة والتعليم والشغل وتأمين متطلبات العيش الكريم للجميع في منطقة عانت طويلا من الإقصاء والتهميش بل والعسكرة. وكما هو الحال دائما، فبدل أن تستجيب الدولة لمطالبه الاجتماعية العادلة والمشروعة، بادرت بعد شهور من التجاهل أحيانا والتخوين أحيانا أخرى إلى اعتماد مقاربة أمنية قوامها القمع الأهوج، مما أسفر على اعتقالات بالجملة عقبتها محاكمات جماعية غابت عنها أبسط شروط وضمانات المحاكمة العادلة، وصدرت خلالها أحكام جائرة وصلت إلى 20 سنة سجنا نافذا، خصوصا في حق من تم اعتبارهم قادة الحراك ومنهم ناصر الزبزافي، نبيل أحمجيق، سمير إيغيد، محمد الحاكي، وزكريا أدهشور، ومحمد جلول، الذين لا زالوا يقبعون بالسجن لغاية الآن. ومن الثابت أن هؤلاء الشباب وغيرهم من المواطنات والمواطنين خرجوا الاحتجاج سلميا بأشكال وأساليب مدنية رفيعة طيلة شهور لم تسجل خلالها أي انزلاقات أو أحداث، وهذا من أجل رفع العسكرة المفروضة على منطقتهم منذ سنة 1958 وتشييد ملحقة جامعية ومستشفى لمعالجة داء السرطان الذي كان يودي بالحياة ولا زال يودي بحياة العشرات منهم، وآخرهم الفقيد أحمد الزبزافي والد ناصر الزبزافي الذي وافته المنية قبل يومين في 3 شتنبر الجاري. وتنديدا كذلك بالفساد المستشري بالمنطقة، والتي تأكد أن فعلا ما ناضلوا من أجله كان صحيحا فيما يتعلق بالفساد بمنطقتهم، بحيث أنه تم إعفاء مسؤولين نافذين ضمنهم وزراء، خصوصا الذين كانوا مسؤولين عن مشروع المنارة المتوسط أواخر 2017. اليوم بعد انصرام ما يربو على 8 سنوات من الاعتقال، أصبح هذا الملف يشكل جرحا مفتوحا نازفا في مسار العدالة والحقوق والحريات بالمغرب، ويزيد من فقدان الثقة في مؤسسات الدولة. والأدهى الأمر أن هؤلاء المعتقلين يجري استثنائهم بشكل متكرر من قرارات العفو أو الإفراج، رغم توالي الإفراج عن العديد من المعتقلين السياسيين ومعتقلين الرأي الآخرين. هذا الاستثناء يعمق الإحساس بالظلم ويطيل في عمر الاحتقان الاجتماعي، ويكشف بالملموس عن منطق الانتقام الذي طبع التعامل مع المنطقة وأبنائها. إننا هنا لنؤكد عبر هذه الندوة أن إطلاق سراح من تبقى من معتقلي حراك الريف وكافة المعتقلين السياسيين والسياسيات رهين بتوفر إرادة سياسية حقيقية لدى الدولة المغربية لطي هذا الملف الذي هو دون أدنى ريب امتداد في الحاضر لانتهاكات الماضي الجسيمة والأليمة. فوحدها المبادرة في هذا الاتجاه كفيلة بفتح صفحة جديدة تساعد على تبديد أجواء التوتر وتعليم من مبدأ سيادة القانون، وتعطي إشارة إيجابية مفادها أن المغرب ينحو فعلا لا قولا نحو احترام الحقوق والحريات الأساسية للمواطنين والمواطنات. ولذلك فإن من واجبنا جميعا كحقوقيين وديمقراطيين وديمقراطيات وسياسيين وسياسيات ومدافعين ومدافعات عن حقوق الإنسان أن نواصل حملات المناصرة والترافع المدني عبر كل المسارات المتاحة، ومنها ما نقوم به اليوم من خلال هذه الندوة المعروضة. إذن وذلك من خلال تحرك حقوقي وقانوني يمكن تجسيده في التوجه إلى الهيئات الأممية والإقليمية، إعداد وصياغة رسائل ونداءات مناشدة وبعثها لدوائر القرار بالمغرب، القيام بحملات للتعريف بالملف وبالخروقات القانونية التي شابته، كذلك تحرك مدني وإعلامي مثلا كتنظيم الندوات، وقفات رمزية، حملات رقمية عبر وسائل التواصل الاجتماعي، إنجاز رسائل تضامن من منظمات وطنية ودولية لتكثيف الضغط الخارجي، دعوة الأحزاب والبرلمانات والمنظمات الوطنية وكذلك الدولية إلى المطالبة بإطلاق سراح هؤلاء المعتقلين السياسيين، ترافع لدى المؤسسات الأوروبية والإفريقية، خاصة أن المغرب شريك في برامج التعاون الإقليمي. إذن إن استمرار اعتقال الشباب وشباب الريف على وجه الخصوص لا يخدم صورة المغرب ولا استقراره، بل يعمق الإحباط ويفاقم الاحتقان. لهذا فقد آن الأوان لكي تتحمل الدولة مسؤوليتها التاريخية وتتخذ المبادرة السياسية الشجاعة من أجل إطلاق سراح من تبقى من معتقلي حراك الريف وكافة المعتقلين السياسيين والسياسيات، وفتح الآفاق أمام مصالحة حقيقية تضع في صلبها الإنسان المغربي كذات حاملة لكافة الحقوق وتتخذ كأساس لها العدالة والحرية والكرامة. فلنجعل إذن من هذه الحملة الدولية صوتا يصدح بالحرية دون تأجيل لمن تبقى من معتقلي حراك الريف وكافة المعتقلين السياسيين والسياسيات بالمغرب. وأعتذر إن تجاوزت 10 دقائق. الصوت تهاني.
كتسمعوني دابا؟ Okay.
وي تهاني تفضل.
Sorry, I got logged out. So I will be. So thank you, Suad, first of all, for your presentation, your talk. I will be trying to summarize for our esteemed guests. So for Suad, the case of Harak Reef detainees is not about individuals. It's about justice and dignity and human rights in Morocco. So in 2016 and 2017, young people protested peacefully for basic rights like healthcare, education, jobs, and to the end of the marginalization of this region that has been quietly repressed during a lot of years. So they were met with repression from the regime, from the Moroccan regime, unfair trials, and of course harsh sentences up to 20 years. So after more than 8 years, their continued detention has become a deep wound, eroding trust in institutions and of course harming Morocco's image. And so releasing them is not a matter of it's not only a matter of justice, but also a necessary political step towards reconciliation, rule of law, and social peace. So for these reasons, we must unite our voices today and to call clearly for the freedom now for all the Harak and political detainees and political detainees of opinions in Morocco. Now I will be switching to Mr. Jamal Ben Omar. So what I want to ask you is what is currently happening in Morocco regarding human rights and the stance of the Moroccan government, and also, and more importantly, what role can international organizations such as the UN play a role in securing the release of Reef prisoners and all political prisoners and those of conscience in Morocco. So please, if you can do it also in 10 minutes, I would be grateful.
Thank you, Tahani. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. First, I want to thank the Moroccan Association for Human Rights, MDH, for organizing this very timely event. And I also want to thank my fellow participants, international participants, who are joining us in this panel. We're here today to demand the unconditional and immediate release of all prisoners of conscience in Morocco. Their continuing detention is in violation of both Moroccan law and international law. Their detention contradicts government claims about what it calls equity and reconciliation, and the claims that Morocco has entered a new era where human rights are protected. Government PR and propaganda campaigns cannot hide the truth. The case of the prisoners of conscience from Reef, who are serving a 20-year prison sentence for their participation in peaceful protests, is a stark reminder that some of the regime's old repressive habits have not changed, and in some aspect have gotten worse. The 2017 Harak movement was a wave of peaceful popular protest that advocated for an end to the marginalization of the Reef region. As someone who was born and brought up in Reef, I know firsthand how our people have suffered since the massacres of 1958-1959. The death of Ahmed Zafzafi, who is a symbol of Reef peaceful resistance and whose son Nasser is serving 20 years prison sentence, is bringing back our collective memories of both repression and resistance. I can feel the pain that Nasser Zafzafi is feeling today. My father died when I was serving a 12-year prison sentence in Kenitra prison. I was not allowed to see him for the last time. My mother died when I was living in exile for 20 years. I hadn't seen her for 5 years. I grew up in Reef listening to my father's stories on how the massacres of 1958, 1959 unfolded and how many of his relatives were killed in Beni Rial. He witnessed these atrocities firsthand. Like my father, I was also a witness to the massacres carried out in January 1984 by the army in the Reef cities of Nador, Al Husseima, and Titwan. This happened just 7 weeks after my release from 8 years of detention, only to be arrested again the same night. King Hassan called all the people of Reef Awbash, thugs. I recount this to show that there's a background here that cannot be erased, and there are deep wounds that the cruelty and the ruthlessness directed at the Zafis have exacerbated. As we can see from the clips of the funeral of Ahmed Zafi, the disconnect between our people in Reef and the authorities is deeper than ever before. And yet, the policies of repressions have failed to subjugate our people in Reef. Let me turn to some facts so you can understand where we are today. As Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, Moroccan human rights groups, and international journalists have repeatedly explained, the Harak movement was a totally peaceful movement that focused on social and economic demands. But this peaceful movement was met with a wave of arbitrary arrest and repression. More than 1,700 people were initially arrested. This was probably the highest number of people arrested ever in the successive waves of repression since independence. Many were criminally charged, and in June 2018, 54 peaceful Harak activists were convicted on a variety of charges related to national security and handed very heavy prison terms of up to 20 years. Both national and international rights organizations have documented the torture that many endured and the serious due process violations that occurred during the trial proceedings. Their trial did not conform to international standard. Their trial was unfair. And in many cases, convictions were based on so-called confessions extracted through torture and under duress. Even a government that is most often a propaganda office that is called the National Council for Human Rights had at the time acknowledged the use of torture against the Harak detainees. Its internal report was never published, and the head of this office was fired. While some of those convicted have since been released, the leaders of the peaceful Harak movement remain detained. Zafzafi is serving a 20-year prison sentence. Samir Ighi, 20 years. Nabil Ahamjir, 20 years. Zakaria Adharosh, 15 years. Muhammad Haki, 15 years. And Muhammad Jalloul, 10 years. 10 years. From the MDH and the Moroccan Coalition of all human rights groups to Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and Freedom House, there is a well-established national and international consensus confirming that these youth have been imprisoned as retaliation simply for their peaceful activism in support of legitimate social and economic demands. As you are aware, the European Parliament had also called for their immediate and conditional release, as well as the release of the journalists who were detained at the time. But the last blow to the Moroccan government credibility came from the UN. In August 2024, the well-respected and impartial UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention adopted an opinion finding that Nasser Zafzafi's detention is arbitrary and violate international law, and therefore called for his immediate release. The UN Working Group specifically found that Nasser Zafzafi, and I quote from the report, was arrested for his expressions and opinions rather than from any violent action on his part, that he is also detained for exercising his right to freedom of association, and that his detention is also linked to his participation in demonstrations against government policies, and that his detention is not an isolated act, but in part of a pattern of targeting him because of his identity and activism. The working group, the UN working group, has also found that the detention of other youth Harak activists who were arrested in connection with the Harak movement, such as Murad Zafzafi and Munir bin Abdullah, was arbitrary. Morocco has a long history of government repression, but its mishandling and its intransigence in the case of Harak prisoners is unprecedented. I must confess that I tried very quietly in 2017 for active advice and a plan for a way out of the crisis, but never got any response. I'm sure I wasn't the only one. Many others have tried. 80 years have passed now. We need assertive action, not politicians in Morocco pressing the prisoners of conscience who have committed no crime to seek pardons from the king. This needs to stop. There is only one effective way to secure the release of all prisoners of conscience in Morocco. We need to redouble our effort nationally. We need to relaunch a new national campaign calling for their release. And we need redoubled support for these national efforts from all influential international capitals and from our partners in the international human rights movement. None of us should rest until all prisoners of conscience are released. Let me now make these remarks in Arabic for our Moroccan and Arabic audience, so I don't have to inflict the translation on Tahani. السيدات والسادة مساء الخير. أود أولا أن أشكر الجمعية المغربية لحقوق الإنسان على تنظيم هذا الحدث في وقته المناسب. كما أود أن أشكر المشاركين الدوليين الذين انضموا إلينا في هذه الندوة. نحن هنا للمطالبة بالإفراج الفوري وغير المشروط عن جميع معتقلي الرأي في المغرب. إن استمرار اعتقالهم يشكل خرقا للقانون المغربي وللقانون الدولي، كما أن هذا الاعتقال يتناقض مع ادعاءات النظام حول ما يسميه بالإنصاف والمصالحة، ويتناقض مع ادعاءاته بأن المغرب دخل مرحلة جديدة تصان فيها حقوق الإنسان. إن الحملات الإعلامية والدعائية للنظام لا يمكن أن تخفي الحقيقة، فقضية معتقلي الرأي من الريف الذين يقضون عقوبات سجنية تصل إلى 20 سنة بسبب مشاركتهم في احتجاجات سلمية تذكرنا بوضوح بأن بعض عادات النظام القمعية القديمة لم تتغير، بل تفاقمت في بعض الجوانب. لقد كان حراك الريف سنة 2017 موجة من الاحتجاجات الشعبية السلمية التي طالبت بإنهاء التهميش الذي تعانيه منطقة الريف. وبصفتي شخصا ولد وترعرع في الريف، فإني أعرف جيدا كيف عانى أهلنا منذ مجازر 1958 و1959. وفاة أحمد زفزافي رمز المقاومة السلمية في الريف، والذي يقضي ابنه ناصر حكما بالسجن 20 سنة، أعادت إلى ذاكرتنا الجماعية صور القمع والمقاومة معا. أشعر اليوم بالألم الذي يشعر به ناصر الزفزافي، فقد توفي والدي بينما كنت أقضي عقوبة سجنية مدتها 12 سنة في سجن قنطرة، ولم يسمح لي برؤيته للمرة الأخيرة. كما توفيت والدتي وأنا في المنفى منذ 20 سنة، ولم أرها لمدة 5 سنوات قبل وفاتها. نشأت وترعرعت في الريف وأنا أستمع إلى حكايات والدي عن مجازر 1958-59 وكيف قتل العديد من أقاربه في بني ورياغل. لقد شهد بنفسه تلك الفظائع، وكما كان والدي شاهدا على تلك الفترة، فقد كنت أيضا شاهدا على المجازر التي ارتكبها الجيش في يناير 84 في مدن الريف الناظور، الحسيمة وتطوان. وقع ذلك بعد 7 أسابيع فقط من الإفراج عني من اعتقال دام 8 سنوات، لأعتقل مجددا في الليلة نفسها التي وصف فيها الملك الحسن الثاني كل أهل الريف بالأوباش. أروي هذه الأحداث لكي أبين أن هناك خلفية تاريخية لا يمكن محوها، وأن هناك جروحا عميقة فاقمتها القسوة التي استهدفت بها عائلة الزفزافي. وكما رأينا في مشاهد جنازة أحمد الزفزافي، فإن الفجوة بين أهل الريف والسلطات أعمق من أي وقت مضى، ومع ذلك فإن السياسات القمعية فشلت في إخضاع أهلنا في الريف. اسمحوا لي أن أقدم بعض الوقائع لفهم الوضع في يومنا هذا. كما أوضحت ذلك منظمة العفو الدولية وهيومن رايت ووتش والجمعية الحقوقية المغربية والصحافة الدولية مرارا، فإن حراك الريف كان حركة سلمية بالكامل تركزت على المطالب الاجتماعية والاقتصادية، لكن هذا الحراك السلمي قوبل بموجة من الاعتقالات التعسفية والقمع، حيث اعتقل في البداية أكثر من 1700 شخص، وهو على الأرجح أكبر عدد من المعتقلين الذين اعتقلوا خلال موجات القمع المتتالية منذ الاستقلال. وجهت لعدد كبير منهم تهم جنائية، وفي يونيو 2018 أدين 54 ناشطا سلميا من نشطاء الحراك بتهم مختلفة مرتبطة بأمن الدولة، وصدرت بحقهم أحكام قاصرة وصلت إلى 20 سنة سجنا. لقد وثقت منظمات حقوقية وطنية ودولية ما تعرض له هؤلاء من تعذيب وانتهاءات جسيمة لحقوق الإنسان أثناء المحاكمات. كانت محاكمتهم غير عادلة ولم تستوفي المعايير الدولية، وفي كثير من الحالات بنيت الإدانات على اعترافات انتزعت تحت التعذيب والإكراه. حتى المجلس الوطني لحقوق الإنسان، وهي هيئة حكومية هدفها تلميع صورة النظام، اعترف آنذاك باستخدام التعذيب ضد معتقلي الحراك، لكن تقريره الداخلي لم ينشر وتمت إقالة رئيسه. ورغم الإفراج عن بعض المعتقلين لاحقا، فإن قادة الحراك السلمي ما زالوا رهن الاحتقال. ناصر الزفزافي 20 سنة، سمير إغيد 20 سنة، نبيل أحمجيق 20 سنة، زكريا أدهشو 15 سنة، محمد حاكي 15 سنة، ومحمد جلول 10 سنوات. من الجمعية المغربية لحقوق الإنسان والتحالف المغربي لجميع الجمعيات الحقوقية إلى منظمة العفو الدولية وهيومن رايت ووتش وفريدم هاوس، هناك إجماع وطني ودولي مؤكد أن هؤلاء الشباب اعتقلوا فقط بسبب نشاطهم السلمي دفاعا عن مطالب اجتماعية واقتصادية مشروعة. وكما تعلمون فإن البرلمان الأوروبي دعا أيضا إلى الإفراج الفوري والغير مشروط عن ناصر الزفزافي وبقية معتقلي الحراك والصحفيين الذين اعتقلوا آنذاك. أما الضربة القاضية الأخيرة لمصداقية النظام المغربي فقد جاءت من منظمة الأمم المتحدة. ففي غشت 2024 اعتمد فريق الأمم المتحدة العامل المعني بالاحتجاج التعسفي، وهي هيئة محايدة وجد محترمة، اعتمد رأيا يؤكد أن اعتقال ناصر الزفزافي اعتقال تعسفي وينتهك القانون الدولي، ويطالب بالإفراج الفوري عنه. وخلص الفريق في تقريره إلى أن الزفزافي، وأقتبس منه هنا، اعتقل فقط بسبب احتجاجه وتعبيره السلمي عن رأيه، لا بسبب أي أعمال عنف ارتكبها، وأن اعتقاله مرتبط بمشاركته في مظاهرات ضد سياسات الحكومة، وأن اعتقاله ليس حالة معزولة، بل إنها تدخل ضمن توجه يستهدفه بسبب هويته ونشاطه. كما خلص الفريق إلى أن اعتقال شباب آخرين على صلة بالحراك مثل مراد الزفزافي ومنير بن عبد الله كان اعتقالا تعسفيا أيضا. للنظام المغربي تاريخ طويل في القمع، لكن تدبيره السيء وتعامله المتعنت مع قضية معتقلي حراك الريف شيء غير مسبوق. أعترف أنني حاولت بهدوء بعيدا عن الأضواء سنة 2017 أن أقدم نصائح بناءة وخطة للخروج من الأزمة، لكنني لم أتلقى أي رد، ولست الوحيد بالطبع، فالكثيرون حاولوا. لقد مرت الآن 8 سنوات، نحن بحاجة إلى تحرك حازم، لا إلى سياسيين يضغطون على معتقلي الرأي الذين لم يرتكبوا أي جريمة لطلب العفو من الملك. يجب أن يكف هؤلاء السياسيون عن هذه التصرفات. إن الطريقة الوحيدة الفعالة لضمان الإفراج عن جميع المعتقلي الرأي في المغرب هي مضاعفة جهودنا وطنيا وإطلاق حملة وطنية جديدة تطالب بالإفراج عنهم، وتعزيز الدعم لهذه الجهود الوطنية من جميع العواصم الدولية المؤثرة ومن شركائنا في حركة حقوق الإنسان العالمية. لا ينبغي لأي منا أن يهدأ له بال حتى يفرج عن جميع معتقلي الرأي في المغرب. شكرا.
شكرا جزيلا أستاذ جبل بن عمر. صراحة كلمة مؤثرة جدا، لأنني الأب ديالي حتى هو كان محكوم ب20 سنة سجنا، وفاش كنت صغيرة كنت كنحضر يعني الأنشطة اللي تخليد شهداء الشعب المغربي، وكنت كنقول فاش غنكبر هادشي ما غيبقاش يوقع. ودابا هادشي كيوقع وكنحاولوا اننا ناضلوا من اجله، ولكن صعيب. So thank you Mr. Jamal. So I was saying that Jamal's talk was very emotional for me, because I am the daughter of a former political prisoner who was also imprisoned, sentenced for 20 years and actually spent 10 years in jail. And so I remember when I was going to actions to celebrate the passing of the political prisoners who had died from torture in prison, etc. I was very little, and I remember I would talk to myself and say, on my watch, this will never happen. When I will grow up, this will never happen. And now I'm witnessing that, and feeling kind of helpless, even though I was among the several young people who advocated for the liberation for the political prisoners. I still feel the helplessness. So thank you. I will now ask Mr. Brian Tronick, who is the Freedom House Director for the Liberation for Political Prisoners. So what I would want to ask is, what does Freedom House campaign regarding Nasser Zafzafi and other Rif detainees actually involve, and how it unfolds? And also I would like to know what are the reactions and the effects of the campaign so far. And of course, eventually I would be interested in knowing how we can collaborate more effectively with Freedom House as a local organization, such as the Moroccan Association for Human Rights. In 10 minutes also, please.
Will do. I want to also begin by thanking the Moroccan Association for Human Rights and this wonderfully impressive, panel of speakers. Thank you all. It's an honor to join you. And I'll take the questions in order. So Freedom House's advocacy for political prisoners is really intended to raise the cost of detaining a political prisoner, right? Dictators and despotic regimes get a benefit, right, by imprisoning people on politically motivated charges. That benefit can be silencing people, sending a message to others, and other things. But our goal in advocating for these brave political prisoners is to raise the cost to the government detaining them. And that cost can be, sometimes it can even be financial, it can be reputational, it can be threatening the relationships that government has with other countries throughout the world. And so we try to think creatively and just really raise the cost and bring consequences on the government, escalating until we achieve the goal of freedom. what we do can really vary. It can be legal advocacy, such as the petition. Freedom House was involved in the petition to the United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention. It can be political advocacy, mobilizing. I'm based in Washington, D.C., mobilizing the U.S. government or foreign governments or multilateral organizations to speak out and to pressure Morocco and other governments throughout the world. And also media and public relations. So just keeping the detention in the news, in the public imagination. As you all have described, the speakers before me, this is an outrage. This is a human rights outrage, a moral outrage, what is happening to these political prisoners, and we must keep them in the public's imagination. In terms of reactions and effects of the campaign so far, the reactions I've gotten personally have been overwhelmingly positive, both from other organizations, civil society organizations, and in the U.S. government and foreign governments that I've connected with. I think when I've connected with different people and spoken about Nasser and the other Hiraq Rif detainees, they understand the injustice of the situation. They understand that 20 years for peaceful protests is absurd and outrageous. And what's really great, it's not, as Jamal said, it's not just me, a human rights lawyer, saying this, or it's not just Amnesty saying this, or us on the call. It's the UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention has adopted a legal opinion on this case, right? Nasser's case and some other cases. And so people understand, as the UN Working Group has stated, Nasser and others are detained for exercising their rights under international law and Moroccan law, right, which protects many of the same rights. And in fact, I've been engaging very heavily with the U.S. government and other governments recently on as Nasser's father's health declined. We engaged heavily to point out the double injustice of detaining a political prisoner, is an unjust and unfair, but doing so as his father's health is declining is just truly a moral outrage. And people understand that, and people get it. And everyone in the U.S. government that I've talked to expressed deep sympathy for the Safi family. And several were just, how can we help? What can we do? And so I can't share all of the effects, because some of the effects are, I can say, behind the scenes diplomatic engagement. So not, I can't name names for everyone. I'll share what's public, because not all of it is. But for example, in the U.S. Congress, Congressman Cohen, who is a member of the Morocco caucus, right? This is a group of U.S. congressmen who have a special interest in building a good relationship with Morocco. Nonetheless, he tweeted out support for Nasser's release, particularly in the lead up, as his father's health was declining. So we're getting some good engagement from even the members of Congress who want to see a good relationship with Morocco. Even they are speaking out, saying this is unjust and unfair. The U.S. State Department's human rights reports mentioned Nasser by name from 2017 to 2021, and then it stopped, not because this case is not compelling, but the U.S. State Department really focuses on cases that have new developments, and Nasser's case had exhausted his appeals and nothing new was happening. I was able to get him mentioned by name again in the 2024 State Department Human Rights Report on Morocco, which I take to be a great win. It's the U.S. State Department acknowledging, in fact, that Nasser's detention is unjust and unfair. And those just came out a few months ago. I can say, I won't name names, but I can say that U.S. members of Congress are raising the case with the government of Morocco privately. I won't say who, because it is private. We've had the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights Defenders speak out just in the past couple of weeks in support of Nasser's release. And then you may have seen we had a joint Freedom House and others came together in a joint civil society letter to the king, King Mohammed, calling for Nasser's release. And it's a testament to the injustice of Nasser's detention that we were able to get all the big names on this letter. Freedom House signed on, Human Rights Watch signed on, Human Rights Foundation signed on, Human Rights Watch signed on, and many other fabulous organizations. We're very eager to support this effort. I want to tell you there are many other efforts ongoing that I can't speak about because, we don't want to tip our hand to the government at all. But we're just starting, and we have lots of ideas and more to come. But so far, to sum up on the reactions, it's overwhelmingly positive, and the effects are just being felt. And I think we're going to see more and more effects as we ramp up the pressure on the government of Morocco. To conclude, Tahani, to your question on how local organizations can work with us, Freedom House, the lifeblood of human rights work are the people on the ground, and many are on this call. And Freedom House is based in Washington, D.C., but we couldn't do anything that we do without local partners. So I hope this is the beginning of a much longer partnership. Freedom House is based in DC, so I think we have special relationships with the US government that we can leverage and bring your message from Morocco to lawmakers, the State Department, in some cases, maybe even White House, because that's something we I think do really well. So I hope we can be a bridge from abroad, bringing the voices of those most affected, including the family of Nasser Zasafi, directly to policymakers in DC and, of course, other countries, because Freedom House has lots of good relationships throughout the world, and really amplify voices, raise attention, and then we're always happy to listen to you. Please tell us what is helpful. I hope we can do so sort of, in the coming days, because I have some ideas. I want to actually talk with you and do some joint projects together. I won't say specifics because, again, this is a public venue. But suffice it to say, let the government of Morocco hear that the human rights community is rallying around these prisoners. And we in DC and abroad are coming together to fight, to raise the cost, to impose consequences. My goal is that Morocco has an image, and I'm wrapping up, I'm mindful of time. Morocco has an image as a romantic getaway, a tourist destination, a film industry mecca. Let all of that be challenged, and you should not be allowed to host, international events and have this image, this untarnished image internationally, when you are sentencing people to 20 years, torturing people. This is the behavior of some of the worst regimes in the world, and let Morocco keep that company if it wants to behave this way. I'll end there, but thank you again for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much for your talk, Brian. It has been very interesting, highlighting the role of Freedom House in diplomacy and advocacy for the liberation for human rights, for political prisoners in Morocco, and of course Harak Reef's detainees. So I will try to summarize this rich talk in Arabic. So إذا بالنسبة لفريدوم هاوس هي جمعية منظمة أمريكية تعمل من أجل الترافع من أجل إطلاق سراح معتقلين السياسيين. تشمل استراتيجيتها تقديم العرائض القانونية، الضغط السياسي، الحملات الإعلامية، خاصة. وقال أستاذ براين أنه الحملة لإبقاء قضية معتقلي الريف حاضرة في الوعي العالمي، خاصة مع دعم فريق الأمم المتحدة الذي يعنى بالاعتقال التعسفي. وبالنسبة له أن الأحكام التي تصل إلى 20 سنة سجنا لمجرد الاحتجاج السلمي فهي تشكل فضيحة أخلاقية. وتتضاعف فظاعتها أمام معاناة العائلات، عائلة المعتقلين، ومنها طبعا عائلة نصر الزفافي. تكلم أيضا عن دور الدبلوماسية الأمريكية وعن الدور الذي تلعبه فريدم هاوس من داخل الكونغرس الأمريكي للترافع من أجل إطلاق سراح معتقلي حراك الريف ومعتقلين السياسيين في المغرب. Thank you again, Brian. Now I will be turning to Tjus Rutten, who is a member of European Parliament. So I would like to ask you what influence has the European Parliament had so far on the situation of RIF prisoners and, of course, other prisoners of conscience and in Morocco, and also maybe journalists and human rights defenders who are critically repressed during these times. And also, what are the concrete actions that can the European Parliament or the European Union in general take to increase pressure on the Moroccan authorities to free the political prisoners in Morocco?
Yeah, thank you very much. And also from my side, thank you to AMDH for organizing this, and great to be here with Jamal, with Sued, and with Brian from Freedom House. As you know, the news of the passing away of Ahmed Zifsavi was big news, not only in the countries where you expect it, but also in the Netherlands, throughout Europe, throughout the world. And of course, it makes us all very sad, but it also makes clear how important the fight is that we are doing, and also that the Hirak Rif prisoners and the struggle they stand for, because I agree with Sued, it's not just about the individual prisoners, it's about justice, dignity and human rights in general. And it's important that to see that this they have not been forgotten, and this struggle has not been forgotten. So the message to the community with you, Tahani, in the Rif, but also to the diaspora, is that we will continue. And I also agree with Jamal that we need to intensify our efforts. Now, about 2.5 years ago, in January 2023, I initiated the first resolution in 20 years on Moroccan human rights policy that showed that actually there's not so much needed to put pressure on the Moroccan government, because they went completely crazy. Extra parliamentary sessions were launched and I don't know what, whereas the demands that we had were not hostile at all. It was nothing strange. It was very, very simple. Respect fundamental rights, respect human rights, release the prisoners, including the mention of Nasser Zafzawi, obviously, but also the journalists. Small success that we had, I think, is that Omar Radiba has been released. He was also a topic of that resolution. But I think it's now time to, as we concluded also already, that we need to redouble our efforts also in international organizations. The European Parliament has a strong voice. As I said, it makes a difference because, well, just that simple resolution already sparked a lot of threats and nervousness within the government. But I also think that we need to get smarter in our strategies, join forces with civil society, like in football, pass each other the ball, make sure that we make more effect of our collective effort, because the problem is deeper than just a parliament or international organizations calling for the release of the political prisoners, because the government of Morocco tries actively to play the European countries apart. They close deals separately. Many of the EU countries are very nervous about migration and about taking back migrants that do not have the right for asylum. And Morocco is using that. They are using this leverage that they have it should be the other way around. The European Union should always, in every contact they have with Morocco, simply say human rights are always on the agenda. There cannot be meetings that we have where we do not talk about difficult issues, because if you want to be friends, and we want to be friends, then we also need to talk about the difficult issues. And one of these difficult issues is that, for example, my country, the Netherlands, but there are many other EU member states, they have actively said, well, okay, we will not talk about human rights anymore. That is a development that is not where we want it. So we are going to redouble our efforts, new initiatives with civil society. I expect, but I should be as wise probably as Brian, not to disclose too much of the strategy, but I think we should, we can expect that around the 3-year mark of this resolution that was adopted in early 23, we have to get back to this issue. We have had elections again in the European Parliament. It's a new parliament, and we need to get back on this issue, because, as I said, this struggle is only over when what happened is when exactly what Sued said and also Jamal has happened. Simple respect, not crazy things, not things that are impossible, not things that are like over asking. No, just simple dignity, respect, and justice, and normal treatment of citizens, normal treatment of a group of citizens that also deserves normal things like education, healthcare, and proper working conditions, because that is what the struggle was about some 8 years ago, more than 8 years ago, and that is still what is at stake. So I hope we can come indeed, and I really want to thank you again for bringing this group together, but also everyone online. Please inspire us, bring us your fresh ideas. We will, and also it's important to say that I have more colleagues. It's not just me. There are my former colleague in the European Parliament, Kati Piri, who has done a lot. She's now in the Dutch Parliament, but there's Belgian MEPs, Spanish MEPs, a lot of MEPs from different political groups that are supporting this cause. So we will get together again, and we will ramp up our efforts in the coming, let's say, half year towards the early start of 26, because it is now more than 3 years ago almost, and it's time to revisit this topic. And again, I want to stand with you in respect and admiration of the courage and the kindness of Ahmed Zefsavi, who passed away. I think he is an example to all of us on how to keep fighting with firm dedication, but also with a kind heart. So I think that's an example to us, and we need to redouble our efforts from today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Schroeten, for this talk that highlights the importance of not forgetting and not giving up on the cause. So I will be trying to translate in Arabic for our viewers. السيد شروتن هو منتخب أوروبي، ديبوتي برلماني أوروبي عفوا، الذي أكد عن أهمية قضية الاعتقال السياسي في المغرب، ويعني يشدد على أن القضية لم تنسى وأن النضال مستمر من أجل إطلاق سراح معتقلي الريف، وكذلك من أجل الجالية اللي في الخارج التي زعما كاين بعض من المناضلين ومناضلات اللي في الخارج اللي ما يقدروش يدخلوا المغرب بسبب أمنية متمثلة عن حراك الريف. كذلك كان قرار البرلمان الأوروبي سنة 2023 رغم بساطته في المطالبة باحترام حقوق الإنسان وإطلاق سراح المعتقلين أثار توترا شديدا لدى الحكومة المغربية وأثبت فعاليته. فيعني يؤكد أن نحن بحاجة إلى مضاعفة الجهود داخل المؤسسات الدولية والتنسيق مع المجتمع المدني لمواجهة توظيف المغرب لملفات كالهجرة كورقة ضغط مع البرلمان الأوروبي، وأنه يعني كيقول أنه يعني مع كل نقاش بين البرلمان الأوروبي والمغرب يجب طرح قضية الحريات وحقوق الإنسان وقضية إطلاق سراح معتقلين السياسيين ومعتقلي الرأي في المغرب. So thank you all for your participation. I have a lot of comments, questions. I have a question for you, Brian. Said Bull says, why did Freedom House action regress in Morocco after, I think there was a person who represented Freedom House in Morocco, but then the person left, and therefore their action has regressed, maybe.
Sure. They may be referring to some recent developments. For those, you all may know that in recent times, just within the past few months, the US government has drastically scaled back its funding for human rights and democracy. So that funding was through the USAID agency and also through the State Department's Department of Human Rights and Labor. In the past few months, there's been a rather drastic cutback in that funding. And unfortunately, Freedom House has been affected by that, by those cutbacks. So a number of our programs throughout the world were funded through USAID and State Department. And the reality is we've had to stop work on those programs. We hope someday to restart, but the reality is that's just the state of the human rights and democracy sector right now.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. So I have some comments. They're not questions, but a lot of people are thanking you for your struggle in this cause. So I have a comment for Jamal. Un diplomate issu de la région du Rif peut jouer un rôle primordial de défendre et de concilier dans l'affaire des détenus de Harak. So I think this is what Mr. Jamal is doing. Yes. So everyone is advocating for the release for the political prisoners. There is also an issue of there are also asking for the release for other prisoners of conscience, Saïd Al-Alami. There is a lot of human rights defenders and journalists who are wrongfully jailed in Morocco without a fair trial. كلمة جد مؤثرة للرفيق جمال. تحية عالية للأستاذ جمال. So I will just see if we have another question, and then maybe we can close the conference. Okay, so I have a question. I think it's in Dutch from Said Ben Ammar. I don't know how to pronounce it, so I try. Veel dank thuis.
I will tell you what he says.
Okay, so
No,
you can see the comments.
Yeah, Saeed Ben Ammar just says, thank you very much for the involvement and the future steps that are crucial. So it's just a thank you. But what is good, I think, to see is that there are comments like from in many different languages. So let's remain encouraged and let's remain hopeful together tonight, but also in the coming weeks and months, because this is not just a group of people. This is a committed group of people throughout the Netherlands, in Spain. I see Spanish comments from Morocco, of course, but also from throughout Europe. So we need to build on this energy. We need to build on the energy that we saw in the past days around the funeral of the father of Nasser, and I think this is a hopeful start of a rekindled process to double our efforts, because we must.
Thank you. And there is a question for Brian. If the time being now with the Trump administration and regression on human rights on global level regarding new authoritarian governments, I think you kind of answered this question, but if you want to add something, please do.
I guess I'm not 100% clear. I understand the point. There's some concern in the human rights space on sort of the administration's actions. One example being the State Department's human rights reports have been significantly reduced in sort of the reporting obligation. But let me say this: as a human rights lawyer, I work with whoever is in power. I work with Republican administrations, I work with Democratic administrations, and in Congress, there's always a mix. And I work across the aisle, we say, because it is the case. There are both persons in the administration and there are members of Congress in the U.S. who do care about freedom of expression and who care about just human rights and care about, freedom. And so, my goal is whoever is in power, I take the message to them, I explain it, and I'll tell you this: I have had interest. I have briefed Republican offices in Congress. I briefed Democratic offices in Congress just in the past few weeks alone, and I've gotten really good interest in this case. So my goal is to get these prisoners out, regardless of who's in power in whatever country.
Thank you, Brian. So, Mr. Jamal Ben Ammar, do you want to say something, to add something? There are a lot of people who are thanking you for your talk, and many were moved by it. So please, you have the floor.
Well, first, I want to acknowledge the fact that in Morocco, human rights organizations, and in particular the MDH, have done a lot, to publicize the cases of these prisons of conscience. And I know also that from all the pictures that I've seen, of the funeral and of Ahmed Zafzafi, that the whole country is in deep shock. And that has been now 8 years of imprisonment. And this is arbitrary detention, as confirmed, by the UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention. And I think this has sparked now, a whole movement in Morocco and throughout the world, to denounce this injustice. These cases are very extreme. And we're only talking about the cases of the Harak prisoners, but in fact, there are other Harak prisoners that I am told are detained in small prisons here and there throughout the north of Morocco that nobody knows about their exact circumstances, their arrest, and so on. But in addition to this, there are many also cases of political prisoners who are languishing in prison simply because they dared to write something on Facebook or Twitter. this is a pattern here that has evolved. And I think there is only one way. I think we have to redouble our efforts in Morocco and throughout the world with our partners in the human rights movement to put pressure on the Moroccan government to release these detainees.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jamal Ben Omar. And you reminded me of a slogan we used to say during the 20th February movement is الحرية للمعتقل الذي لا نعرفه, which translates into freedom for the detainee that we don't know about. So there are always political prisoners, detainees of opinion, of conscience, that unfortunately don't get the media attention, the international attention, and hopefully we can work better to give equal advocacy for all. أستاذة سعاد, عندك شي كلمة أخيرة, شي حاجة بغيتي تضيفيها؟
نعم أكيد. أنا أريد أن أشكر الأساتذة على مداخلاتهم القيمة جدا، وهذا ما يظهر من خلال التفاعل الكبير للناس اللي كيتابعوا هذا الندوة. وأكيد أن ما يشغل بال الكثيرين، ومنهم كما لاحظتم أناس من الريف اللي شاهدوا وعاينوا كل ما جرى بالمنطقة وما عاشته المنطقة من ظلم وما يحسون به من قهر من خلال التعامل المختلف الذي يؤكد بأن منطقة الانتقام للأسف هو ما يشمل منطقة الريف، خصوصا إذا ما عدنا إلى أنه مؤخرا في كل مرة يتم يكون الإفراج على مجموعة من المعتقلين، منهم مدونين، منهم صحفيين، وحتى منهم الحق العام اللي وصل إلى 17,000 سجين اللي تم الإفراج عليه. ولكن دائما يستثنى لمعتقلي حراك الريف، خصوصا هؤلاء اللي كيتعتبروا من قادة الحراك واللي تجاوزوا 8 سنوات. وللأسف كان خلال المحاكمات كان يتم سؤالي: ترى كم تعتقدين أننا سنستمر في الاعتقال؟ كان هناك من يعتقد أنه سنة أو سنتين إلى أن يخف الضغط الذي كان آنذاك، وإلى أن يعتبر بالنظام بأنه علم هؤلاء وأنهم ما يمكنش أنهم يرجعوا مثلا للاحتجاج، وإلى أن يتم بعد العسكرة اللي كانت تعيشها المنطقة الريف، وأنا عايشتها بنفسي وشفت الحسيمة اللي كانت يا إما أن تكون العسكرة أو تهجير الشباب بحجة يا إما يهاجروا إلى الخارج أو من منطقة الريف بحجة العمل إلى منطقة فاس، أنه كان يتم من إفراغ منطقة بكاملها من شبابها لضمان عدم تكرار الاحتجاج الذي عم المنطقة. إذن هذه المسألة كنت أجيبهم بأنه قد يستمر الاعتقال إلى 8 سنوات. ما كنتش كنبغي نحبطهم، كنعتقد بأنه أقصى ما يمكن من خلال تجربتي السابقة. حتى أنا كما قالت هاني، أنا أخت لمعتقل سياسي، قلت بأن المسألة قد تدوم 5 6 حتى بالنسبة اللي عندهم 20 سنة حتى 8 سنوات، حتى يعتبروا بأنه الملف طالهم النسيان، وأنه حتى بالنسبة لهؤلاء المعتقلين أنه نسوهم الناس في المنطقة، أو أن ما بقتش عند بديك الصورة ولا الرمز اللي كاين في المنطقة كمناضلين اللي دافعوا عن منطقتهم بأكملها. وهذاك الدفاع اللي أصبح دفاعا عن الوطن ككل، على كل الشعب المغربي. فكنت كنعتقد للأسف أنه أقصى ما يمكن أن يصلون إليه من خلال تجربتي ومن خلال أنه قد يصلون إلى 8 سنوات. اليوم كنوصلوا إلى 8 سنوات، وما جرى مؤخرا خلال العزاء أو خلال الجنازة ديال الفقيد أحمد الزفزافي كيأكد بأن للأسف النظام المغربي ماض في مسلسله لقمع والانتقام من منطقة ككل، ماض في مسلسله أنه لا يمكن أن يسمح لهؤلاء بأن يروا النور، خصوصا وأنه يرى بأن لا زال هناك التفاف حولهم، وبأنهم لم يتم نسيانهم. ولعل ما الاستقبال الذي قوبل به ناصر الزفزافي الجنازة المهيبة اللي كانت في الوفاة كتبين بأن هناك التفاف كبير حول ناصر ورفاقه، وهناك أيضا دعوة لإطلاق سراحهم، ولعل كل شيء سمع اللي كانت كتسمع الحرية لناصر خلال أعتقد بأن ما يجب الانتباه إليه إلى أن اليوم يجب تكثيف جهودنا إن وطنيا أو دوليا، ويجب العمل بشكل مشترك موحد لسببين: لصعوبة الأمر وصعوبة فرض إطلاق سراح النظام لسببين أساسيين. الأول هو انصراف العالم والمنطقة خصوصا يعني شرق أوسطية والمغربية إلى ما يجري من جرائم إبادة بحق الشعب الفلسطيني، وبالتالي انصراف حول يبدو أن الاعتقال وأن مسألة أقل من ما يتم في التقتيل في حق الشعب الفلسطيني والشعوب المنطقة. ثانيا أن المغرب يسوق لصورة المدافع على حقوق الإنسان، خصوصا بعد توليه المنصب في الأمم المتحدة، يسوق لصورة أنه يحسن الوضع الداخلي لحقوق الإنسان، وبأنه يتبنى حقوق الإنسان، وبأنه يتم الإفراج على، يعبر عن ذلك من خلال الإفراج على المعتقلين، من خلال مجموعة من الممارسات اللي يسوقها للخارج، في حين أن الواقع شيء مختلف، في حين أن الأمر يزداد ترديا وسوءا، سواء من خلال الرفض لإطلاق سراح هؤلاء المعتقلين وغيرهم من المعتقلين الآخرين، سواء من خلال اليوم المتابعات تتم. أنا كنت يعني محامية لمعتقلي حراك الريف، وعرفت المتابعات كيف كانت. على الأقل متابعات كانت فيها كتبان بأنها تتعلق بمعتقلي رأي ومعتقلين سياسيين. اليوم يتم اختلاق جرائم تتعلق بالحق العام، إما جرائم جنسية أو جرائم مالية، وبالتالي حتى يتم القتل ديال الصورة ديال المناضل والمعتقل الرأي أو المعتقل السياسي أمام الرأي العام، وبالتالي محاكمته أمام الرأي العام حتى قبل أن يصل إلى المحكمة. على أي في هذا الوضع الصعب جدا يجب الانتباه لهذه المسألة، يجب تكثيف الجهود، يجب فضح الممارسات اللي كتعتبر من طبيعة النظام، ويجب أيضا القيام بكل الحملات من أجل المطالبة بإطلاق سراح المعتقلين حراك الريف وكذلك معتقلين السياسيين. وأتقدم بالشكر الجزيل للسادة الأساتذة سواء تيس أو برايان أو جمال بن عمر على مداخلاتهم القيمة اللي اليوم أعطتنا نحن أيضا كمنظمين اللي هم الجمعية المغربية لحقوق الإنسان أن هناك ناس صوت لنا في الخارج اللي ممكن أن يدافع ويطالب على احترام حقوق الإنسان بشكل عام، وأيضا بإطلاق سراح كافة المعتقلين السياسيين. وشكرا.
شكرا جزيلا رفيقة سعاد. So actually Suad talked about the issue of revenge from the state towards the Rif region, and saying that in the last years the king released during religious days a lot of prisoners, but never those of Harak. So it raises the question of the specificity of the Rif region in regards to, of course, history and the militarization of the region, and also the fact that the regime has been trying to empty this region from its youth through migration or through pushing them to work in other cities, etc. I think Mr. Chus wants to leave. I just have a last question for Jamal, because I think it's a very interesting one. So please, the Marwan says, in the current circumstances, how can the Moroccan diaspora organize and coordinate its effort safely to put effective pressure on the release of political prisoners, and any practical advice would be greatly appreciated. And I ask this question because usually even the defenders of political prisoners then may become also political prisoners and political and detainees of conscience and opinion.
Well, look, from what we see, there have been many groups that sprung up, in Europe and even North America, who are focusing on human rights issues, and in particular, the issue of the Reef detainees. There is a large Reef population also in the diaspora, and who are well connected also with people inside the Reef. So they follow these events very closely, and they have been already very active. There have been demonstrations, there have been petitions, there have been conferences. A lot has been done, but a lot more can be done. And I'm sure there have been contacts, and all these groups are in discussions on the next phase, because they're very, very disappointed that after 8 years, particularly after the death of Ahmed Zafzafi, this issue is still unresolved. So I'm sure there is going to be more actions in the weeks and months ahead.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jamal, Choose, Brian, Suad. Thank you all again for your insights, and hopefully we can work better and collectively in the few coming weeks, days and weeks maybe, to ensure and advocate for the release of all political prisoners and those of opinion, and also obviously Harak Reef detainees. Thank you again, and I hope to see you soon and to work with you soon. Thank you. Bye bye.
Shukran.
Shukran. Salama.
شكرا.